Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Better Opinion. I'm your host, Kevin. I am joined once again by my co-host, Manser. Manser, things are good.
Things are better, best, great.
I'm going to make things good, better, best, because I am the best.
Best for you. I forget the rest.
Best choice. Yeah, well, every time we do this setup, it's a joy.
I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you like it.
Well, it's a new puzzle to figure out what between last week and this week broke, despite all the parts being identical. It's magic.
It's called, what is it? It's as random as today's politics, I think. Really, it really encapsulates the political climate, I feel.
Real though. Listen, I've said this, I've always been a person that's happy to talk about politics and talk about current affairs. We've done that in a lot of episodes.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing it today, though.
Well, I said this on stream the other night. I said, I think I'm kind of done for now. And it's not because I'm upset by what's going on. It's more that I'm like, it's too much. It's all so extreme right now, and it's moving at the speed of light, and it's all a mess.
You don't like the ban on paper straws?
I don't care. I don't care.
I don't care.
Like, and so it's like, you know what? It's quite exhausting. I think I'm just going to go back to saying inflammatory things about podcast hosts that upset randos on the internet and talking about video games.
Really?
Yeah.
Video games. Oh, we do those?
We actually do those.
I can't believe
I know, regularly. Like, that's like our primary hobby. We've just been mostly talking about how insane the political climate is.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
It is pretty crazy. It's actually very normal. It's all good. Everything's good right now. It's like this is fine.
Huh?
Yeah, this is fine. Water.
Is it?
Okay, so listen. I do have something I speaking of insane, I was recently introduced to RimWorld. The video game.
Rimming, my favorite.
Rimming, yeah, it's one of my favorites, yeah. Well, it's a great game because whenever you talk about it, you can say I was rimming, which is pretty good. And it's the other person who makes it a sex thing, so it's like pretty cool.
Yeah, it's your fault for misunderstanding me, really.
Yeah. But it got me thinking about this, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. Lately, I've found myself really moving away from, like, mainstream games. I feel like the subject, like, whenever I see, like, a mainstream game, I find it to be kind of boring. Like,
well, what would you consider a mainstream game? Because
AAA anything.
AAA anything.
They're all kind of just like even the ones that I used to really like. They feel, how do I put it? You look at something and there's like no stylization. Like they're going for hyper realism, and it doesn't really make it better.
Well,
it makes it feel almost just like performative appearances.
Well, I think the problem is it feels like hyperrealism is like a selling point. It's like the old days, like, can you run Crisis? Crisis looks so real.
It's so real.
Look at this explosion. It's
so
like I'm really
real.
there. Yeah. It's so real. And at some point that was very cool because it was a novel idea that you would on your computer have a game that looked pretty realistic. I mean,
because that never happened before.
That's never happened before. It was at one time people saw like the original Max Payne with the game director's face like taped onto this
like this with this expression.
Yeah, it was like this is so real.
It's so
Graphics
real.
will never get better than this.
Yeah, that was it. Max Payne was the pinnacle. It was the pinnacle.
This is peak gaming.
This is peak gaming.
They saw Laura Croft and her triangle tits. Like it was like
I don't know about you, but I was disappointed to find out that tits were not triangular in real life.
It's like it's like if I just looked anywhere, if I looked here, yeah, they aren't triangles. It's insane.
Well, that's just because you're inferior. You got to upgrade to the triangle tits.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
But it feels like for a long time realism has been a selling point, and then we have these old ass motherfuckers who have been in games for a long ass time, head of these AAA game companies. It's not that have forgotten it's not really impressive anymore.
Yeah, it's not
It's
impressive, and what it ends up doing is it pushes hardware specifications. It's always unoptimized,
Mhm.
so everything is worse than the last generation in performance, but only maybe a percent better in appearance. And the and what you gain from it is something that isn't particularly interesting. All of the games I have an obsession with right now, Kenshi,
Mhm.
right? Super mediocre graphic quality, uh looks weird, all
Mhm.
very stylized, very unique game because the focus wasn't the appearance was thematic, but
Mhm.
not like the focus. The focus was this one guy had an idea and he wanted to make it real. Rimworld,
Mhm.
same thing, right? Like
Mhm.
the goal was to create something. It wasn't about appearances, and they look kind of weird when you first look at them, and then
Mhm.
once you start playing, it's like all of that weirdness goes away, and now you're like really into how stylized it
Yeah,
is.
because there's been a big shift in gaming in general. Because really early, if you look at the original Xbox games, they were all very strange.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Games
SS
were always stylized.
games were always stylized, and they had to be because you couldn't just simulate real life. Part of the thing about graphics is that people had to come up with these real weird workarounds to actually get them to work. In fact, was it's Crash Bandicoot
Mm-hmm.
by Naughty Dog, who I'm not as big of a fan of now, but the original Crash Bandicoot was revolutionary because the way they had like a unique way to actually handle memory. They had to do strange things with the disc in order to get the game to run. They had to like
Mm.
create new programming innovations. And the specific thing that they did is relate to memory. They had to have like this little cache of what to load next on the screen. And I could go into some depth on it, but I don't. I think that's a bit.
Yeah, it's a bit deeper than we need to go, probably. Yeah.
There's an
There's tons
episode.
of videos you can
There's
watch
an
on it, though.
videos on it. There's a video of like the actual person talking about it.
I think I've actually seen that. I think like years ago,
Yeah.
someone might have been you posted it when we used to watch them every Sunday on stream. We would watch videos.
Hmm.
Someone posted that video. I know what one you're talking about.
Hmm. And it's very interesting, like the weird things that people had to do to just get games running.
Mm-hmm.
But then eventually games started. People noticed games are becoming lucrative,
Yeah.
and
And now big companies are investing millions into
yeah,
it
and it's
to make Concord.
it's weird because it used to be I forget what it was before Halo, but when COD came out, they used to want to be like we want to be as popular as Halo.
Right.
Halo was the big thing, which I think a lot of kids would not realize.
Not nowadays, yeah. Well,
Now,
because Halo's a dead IP. Like Bungie is mostly not the people who made Bungie famous.
mhm.
They're making games that suck.
Yeah,
Destiny, that's all they make, and it's
yeah,
bad.
all of the people who were at Bungie, yeah, who made Halo left, and Bungie was based off of the Unreal Tournament games, which
Right.
no one knows. I don't think anyone, because like no one real. It's like it's a dead genre, the arena shooter, which if you there's a new Unreal Tournament which Quad Laser plays.
Right.
That
Well, that it's. I'd say I would agree with you that like if someone who liked those genres were to hear you say that, they'd get really angry. Be like, it's not dead, as like it's them and their 15 friends, and like that's the entire player base.
Well, listen, people play Fortnite to watch some big music star play on the
Digital
big screen
stage, and it's
on
just
the
like an
digital
automated
screen
thing.
with
Yeah.
Skibbity Guy and Lady Gaga and Goku just doing
And Hatsune Miku.
and Hatsune. You know, Fortnite has really ruined the crossover. It's like, cause like, if I say any character is like, oh, they weren't in Fortnite. It's like
Right.
someone told me Buff is like Buff Peter Griffin is in Fortnite. I was like, oh, they weren't in there before.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's like I thought it was all already in there. What do you mean? No, I know what you mean. I think the thing is that like going off of what you were saying is that it used to be that there were problems that were solved by clever artwork.
And creative solutions.
Well, sure. But let me make my point. It's like clever artwork was a big part of like because of the limitations of the
Mhm.
graphical power of a game,
Mhm.
coming up with unique and interesting designs was an important part of making something look good.
Yes.
Right. So that's why a lot of the, the N64, PlayStation 1 era games are very goofy, very cartoony. And you see that actually in MMOs, right? Really old MMOs, they tried to make it look like the artwork of something. So EverQuest and stuff. But what ended up like killing the genre, World of Warcraft? What was World of Warcraft compared to other MMOs? Very cartoony and stylized. It was a very stylized version of an already cartoony thing, which was Warcraft, right? And that has survived. And the only other MMOs that have survived have their own unique stylization. You could say Final Fantasy XIV is fairly realism based, but it's really not. Everything is it's sort of a crossover between anime characters and real people.
Yeah.
There's sort of a middle ground there. And you wouldn't see that at a glance, but it is very fantastical.
Yeah.
And Guild Wars too, which has its own stylization and appearance. So, that's because that really stylized appearance it's easier to run it. You can cut corners in places you can't when you try to go for true realism.
People still play RuneScape.
Old school RuneScape.
RuneScape. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you spend all your time just trying to make like this realistic game, well, how do I differentiate between these 5 different realistic games other than the title? And you could say they are different, and they are actually.
Yeah.
But like when you show me a trailer, it all just looks like the same shit. I'm not getting something special that makes me go like, oh, that's like a cool
because
thing.
being different is too dangerous, especially for AAA companies. They've become too big I'm gonna say this like we've said before. They have to pledge themselves to a different entity, which is shareholders, and they cannot do anything too weird that makes a shareholder uncomfortable. And shareholders are not gamers.
Yep, that's true. And I do want to clarify, it's not that all attempts at realism are bad. I mean, Half-Life had people who were supposed to be as realistic as you could, but like those games where they went unrealistic was in the gameplay, right? And they were an innovation for their time. I mean, playing Half-Life 2 now does kind of feel like frustrating in a lot of ways. But that for its era, right, it was doing its own thing. And I think that it's frustrating because people will tell me about this next thing that's coming out, and it's one of 3 things. Some sort of hyper-realistic, like, shooter or cutscene simulator. Some sort of survival craft made by some guy who just, like, copied another survival craft. Or, well, actually, I guess there's 4 things. It would be, so it's one of those 2, or it's some like pixel art indie thing, or it's one of those 3 things but PvP. You can take like any of those and then go like, oh, I made an arena shooter, right? Or I made an extraction shooter. I'm like, right, but it's just your hyper realistic shooter genre, right? Or it's just your survival slot but it's Rust, right? So you've got these 3 categories, and is it PvE or PvP? Except for pixel shit. I don't know if there's any PvP pixel shit. And when
I'm sure there's something.
And it sucks because people will say, oh, I feel like you discount like pixel art games a lot. And I go, I do, because I kind of like tired of them. And I'm sure there are some out there like Zero Sievert where I'm like, hey, despite it being very like pixel art and like indie, it's got that indie look. Despite that, it's actually a very good game mechanically. And it's too bad this couldn't be even better. It's great. I wish it could be even better if it could be a little more cool looking, right? But that is, but like oftentimes, someone will be like, I released a game, and what they meant is, and they made an RPG Maker pixel shit,
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's even, people say it's a great game, it's got great mechanics. I go, yeah, but there's 3 games. I'll have this same explanation.
The 3 blades.
It's the 3 blades.
3 blades.
It's the 3 games. The realism, the survival slop, and the pixel shit,
and then the mashup of all of those things.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tired of, hey, I made a Quake like, but also it's a card game. It's like, but it's like
everyone keeps
like that's original. I mean, someone might find that fun. It's like
I want more stuff like Buckshot Roulette. That was a really unique idea for $3.
Oh, was it that with the weird face and
the demon? Yeah, and you're trying to play roulette with buckshots and you have special. It's like a puzzle. Each round's a puzzle.
I think the problem is people don't have original ideas anymore.
Mm-mm.
I can't say that because buckshot roulette kind of discounts that. I feel like people are just too afraid to like come up with their own shit.
Well, and new ideas are hard. You
Yeah.
know, Phasmophobia became really, really popular, and it became so popular that now a lot of people don't like it. You know, it's one of those things where all the people I know who love like a game that's like exclusively made by like a guy on drugs in a garage and he's like dying of hypothermia as he programs it on like a computer made mostly of rocks. Like it's those people would love the game if it was obscure, but because it is like popular now, it's not. But that game was very original,
Yeah.
right? Like that game was very, very original, and it was, in my mind, like a really cool idea. Now I have to admit, nowadays Phasmophobia is at a point for me where it is burnout. I'm tired of it. It's solved, but when it first came out, it was like, oh, like a non-scripted, like AI driven ghost hunt. That's a really cool idea that I've
Yeah.
never experienced because most horror is scripted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, really neat. It's the same reason Alien Isolation is neat,
Yeah.
right? It's this dynamic nature of it. And I was I or not was, but I am always thinking like it's every once in a while someone comes up with a really cool idea, but they don't have the means to make it. And sometimes they do. So we see Phasmophobia, we see Kenshi, we see, RimWorld or whatever. Some guy just had an idea and made it happen.
Yeah.
But it can be really hard to do. And instead you get sort of just this like mill of identical things that never succeed because they're just a ripoff of something else or a mashup of ideas. It's my roguelike extraction card game with
Yeah.
pixel art.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of my point is that I feel like, and actually before I make my point, I want to say to one thing that you said. People don't have original ideas. I don't even think there's anything wrong with seeing something you like and saying I want to do a different spin on that.
Well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but
they don't do it. What they do is make the same thing, or just again, it's like, oh, Slay the Spire.
Yeah.
Let me just make Slay the Spire, but I'm going to call it something else and like, I don't know, add like a, I don't know, pixel art.
Pixel art.
Let me do pixel art.
Yeah, Vampire Survivor was a good one. Someone gifted me a Vampire Survivor clone. It was just, this is just
Vampire Survivor, but they're usually worse in my opinion. They're not as good.
Yeah, it was worse. I mean, like I felt like the art was worse, even though I felt like the artist thought it was better.
Yeah. Yeah, you run into that a lot with a lot of games. Darkest Dungeon had its, copycats. And I think sometimes that's fine. Like, I think, for example, an idea that I'd really like to see is I love Darkest Dungeon conceptually. I think Darkest Dungeon 2, I like it mechanically better, but I don't like the world better. I like the, here's your town. These are your adventurers. Send them into the dungeon.
It's Hamlet. It's
yeah, whatever. I liked that, right? Like I liked the Hamlet. I liked building up the Hamlet. I liked sending adventurers out, and then like, failing the dungeon just meant getting a new party to send in the dungeon.
Yeah.
I liked that, but I actually didn't like how. And this other people disagree with this, and that's fine. This isn't to say it's a bad game. I actually think it's a really great. I think it's a really well designed game, and there's a reason it's so popular. But I don't really enjoy the fact that there's a lot of RNG to whether you get fucked or not.
Yeah, I've noticed sometimes my entire party just decides to go insane. I don't.
Yeah, or you should lose, and then suddenly it's like, actually, that guy decides he's virtuous, which makes everyone else have a cascade of better moods, right? So it's like, and some people say, well, that's what makes it exciting, and I go, but not for me. And that's
it's not a bad game, but I often find it frustrating when if I think I played something well, but I am not rewarded for playing it well because I got unlucky.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure there are people out there who live and breathe these games who would say, no, no, no. If you're actually a genius like me, you will always do perfect every time.
Hmm.
Whatever. My point is that there are mechanics in that game that are not ideal for me and make me end up not playing it. And I would love for someone to take almost the same concept, but bring back sort of the like, you've played well, so you win, no RNG involved mechanic.
Hmm.
Because one of the things is that I talked about this with RPGs the other day. I was playing Final Fantasy IX
Hmm.
on stream, and I don't like ATB battle systems.
Hmm.
I much prefer Final Fantasy X, where there's just like a line of you can see turn orders,
Yeah.
and you can like use mechanics to sort of manipulate that a little bit,
Hmm.
haste, slow, other things, and you have all the time in the world to think. That game was like an ideal RPG for me because I'd spend a lot of time just like thinking about what I'm going to do.
Hmm.
Same thing with the Persona games. Then I played Metaphor Refantasio. Love that game. I don't really like the what is it called? Advantage disadvantage system with the way
Hmm.
that like if you get critical hit, then they get to attack again, or if you miss, then you lose extra actions. I don't really like when RNG plays a role in my strategy, and
Hmm.
people disagree. I had people in my chat saying like, "Oh, I like that. I think it's good." And I go, "Right, but I don't." And I keep seeing these things more than I see the thing that I like.
Yeah. I find it's the roguelike problem. Even though it's not a roguelike, it feels like the roguelike problem where it's like I make these varied things and that's what makes my game unique and fun is the randomness of what you encounter,
Mm-hmm.
which I find I have a hard time interfacing with
Mm.
because it's like it it feels like it makes me less likely to make a risk, so I am less likely to get better at the game mechanics.
You know what I realized it was for me? A big part of it is time. I value my time a lot.
Mhm.
And as I get older, I value my time more and more. I think that if I played some of these games in my teens, it would be like I did with MMOs and stuff. I'd
Mhm.
be willing to waste thousands of hours just like doing whatever
Yeah.
objective. But now I value my time. So what happens like with a roguelike is if there is no persistence to what I did, right?
Mhm.
Then I feel like I wasted my time. And someone could say, well, you didn't waste your time. You got to play and you gained experience at how to play. But to me,
It's a
it's a
grind.
grind. And I don't want instant gratification, right? Obviously, I'm
Mhm.
playing Kenshi and RimWorld. There is no such thing as
Yeah.
instant gratification with those games. But everything I do feels like a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, and yeah, if you could have, if you play like a hardcore Kenshi game and just let your guys die and don't reload saves,
Mhm.
then that can happen, right? But that's a
Mhm.
decision. You're not forced into it.
Yeah.
You can totally play to where you just reload a save. If you want to reload a save, you want to save scum,
Mhm.
it's a single player game. You can do that, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of games put sort of an artificial, like, well, there is no save scumming in this game.
Mhm.
And when you say you don't like it, then people go, well, you're just not good enough. It's a good thing. And I go, it's good to you, but I'm requesting a dilemma people seem to have, and tell me what you think of this, is when you say you don't like something, they go, "Oh, so you're saying it's bad." And I'm going, "No, I'm saying I'd like other things." Well, then don't play this. Okay, but a vast majority of what's coming out falls into these categories of not the thing I'm looking for. I would like more Final Fantasy X, not
Mhm.
10-2. I would like more Kenshis. I'd like more RimWorlds.
Mhm.
I would like more unique MMOs. There used to be a ton of them, but we don't get that. We get World of Warcraft and VR chat World of Warcraft, which is what Final Fantasy 14 is.
Mhm.
You know, uh, what in Guild Wars? People go, well, there's Guild Wars. I go, yeah, that's its own. Getting into Guild Wars 2 now kind of feels like going, what the fuck is going on? There's like 500 expansions,
Mhm.
living world. I don't understand. It's great for the people who play it, but if you've never played it, you can get lost.
Mhm. I remember a long time ago, a friend of mine recommended me Guild Wars. I can't get into MMOs. I
Mm,
just cannot. It. But back to what you're saying. So I feel like just people see these things as difficulties that they have overcome and they feel proud of it. so they kind of defend the
Mm.
difficulty they've gone through. Like the primary thing I think of is Dark Souls and pausing,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to pause. And I'll be very frank, I think the reason you cannot pause in Dark Souls is because it's online, and they
Mm.
don't they don't know how to deal with pausing.
That's usually an issue, especially for Japanese made games.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is. This is an interesting thing that I noticed. Japanese developers always struggle with internet. Japanese MMOs, it, Final Fantasy XIV is the first Square Enix online game that
Mhm.
just used a launcher, and then you type in your credentials and then it takes you to the game where
Mhm.
you load into the game. At Final Fantasy XI, you have to go through like a launcher that has its own login, and then it goes through a weird sign-in process, and then you have to go through 3 menus to launch the game.
Mhm.
And then when you get into the game, it loads the game and then takes you to the character screen and then loads into the character screen. And it all runs really badly and delayed because the netcode is terrible. And
Yeah.
that's every single online Japanese game.
That's funny because it's been a problem in fighting games for a long time, and someone back in the day made the code to make online for fighting games good decades ago.
Uh huh.
On the original, when the original Xbox was out, it's like someone made the was it GGPO is like rollback netcode, and it's like, hey, this is open source. You can just
You can
use
just
it.
have it.
You can just use it. And then Japanese developers were like, maybe not.
I don't think so. It's scary. That weird gaijin made it, which
And
means I hate it.
and multiple indie games just have better netcode than any of the Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5, any of the fucking main Japanese fighting games that are amazing is like
Right.
just are trash online.
And that's that. I don't know why this is, but even to this day, I mean, you look at Nintendo. Any Nintendo online thing always had like 12 weird steps to do it.
It's like you to talk to anyone through like speaker, you have to have a phone.
Yeah, it is the weirdest thing. And I mean, like, I remember when you wanted to invite people to your village in Animal Crossing, and it had like a 12-step process where you had to, like, you had to, like, twist your knuckle to the left and then tap the wall 3 times and plug in this little device that asks for your
Yeah.
proof of citizenship. I'm being facetious, but, like, it was always such a weird process.
I remember there was an explanation. I believe someone like in the fighting game community said it's something that is like their internet is just better, and like most of the times they spend it in their time in like arcades or something.
Well, the country is much smaller, and
Yeah.
the vast majority of people live in one of the various Tokyo suburbs,
yeah.
right? Like, Tokyo is, like, I think the largest city in the world or something.
Mhm.
It's like, or at least the most jam-packed. So, like, you look at the various provinces, they have their own governors.
Yeah.
They're like a state, but they're all just a section of Tokyo,
Mm.
right? And they're all just like cities. If you were to just take that out and compare it, population density, building density to like any other city, it'd be comparable or denser, And so the chances are that 90% of the time you are playing against someone who's just not very far from you.
Which is probably why the DS like share games with people was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was a story about like how on the Game Boy they wanted to remove the share cable. This was right before they were considering having Pokemon released. This
Right.
was before they, and then the moment Pokemon released, this was like the one feature is like connecting
Your games so you can trade.
it's like
Even that was a process, though. You had to like
Yeah.
go into a special room and go to a menu and then invite the person. You're plugged in directly with a cable. There's no other source from which to get this, but you still had to go through like a 12-step process just to go, can you take my Haunter and then give it back to me? So I can have a Gengar.
And there was this whole time when like American developers were trashing on Japanese developers, saying they were bad at making games. And while I don't believe it's true,
Uh-huh.
I do believe there is some issue with
There's a certain technical understanding they don't have.
it. Might just be that all coding is kind of in English.
Maybe.
Is like because like documentation like for any language is mostly specifically in the English language. It
Yeah,
might be.
I don't know. I mean, I don't get into that. It's definitely a consistent thing that I see is that problem with like Japanese netcode and Japanese programming around. And it's like even just logical processes of 10 menus instead of one, like the idea of like convenience, you know.
Yeah.
Um and I think, you know, going back a little bit, uh I think that's it. What ends up happening a lot is there's certain circles that get into sort of one mindset.
Mhm.
Like, so for example, like I was saying, you were talking about difficulty, right? There's sort of an issue online right now. Like I was streaming RimWorld. It was
Yeah.
my first time ever playing it. You know, I love playing games where my audience can backseat me. I think that's very fun because it's like we get to engage with each other. You know, not backseating like
Yeah.
you have to do this, but like, hey, I have a question and they can just answer it. I
Yeah.
think that's very fun. And I I remember every time someone came in, they go, "What difficulty you're on? What's your storyteller?" And storyteller is a good question because if you're not playing Randy Random, the game is normal, and if you are playing Randy Random, it's not. Um, but what difficulty? What difficulty? What difficulty? It's like I don't know, man. Piss difficulty.
Ah.
The answer was whatever the middle one is, but like because all I did was go click 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 go.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's like why is that like the main focus? Because that's what's happened online is always push difficulty. And so people say don't summon in Souls games, which was like its primary selling point at the beginning was this cool asymmetrical online.
It's the whole reason you can't pause.
Yeah, you go, you know, in Elden Ring, you're not people always say don't use, you know, the ashes to summon stuff, and I'm like, well, the game pushes them. 90% of the rewards for exploration are just some weird summon, like a bunch of skeletons or a dude.
I love my jellyfish.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, but they say don't do that, and it's like. In Sekiro, you'd find all these candies that gave you power-ups, but then people would be like, oh, you used a candy? Well, then you didn't really beat the game. And it's like, what? The game inundates me with them. Are so supposed to just look at them?
I didn't mod them in.
Yeah, it's like...
Here's the problem. There's like... There's just... They want... I don't know. They want to impress themselves with not using stuff
and then they
in
want
the game.
Yeah, they want to feel good that they did something, and then... they want to validate that feeling by saying you're not doing it right if you're not doing what they did.
Because here's the thing. I think Dark Souls does actually have difficulty choices. It's the build you choose. It's how you choose to play the game. If you choose to block or not, how much stamina, what you level up. It all determines how easy or difficult the game is for you. And it's like everyone just wants to dodge roll and do that, and which is fine. I personally like just going naked with the biggest weapon I can find and mashing it because I like seeing big number.
Right.
But it's like even like a common friend of ours like Miz is like I don't know, I don't feel like a gamer if I'm not like doing I don't know like triple flippy dips.
No, and that is the thing is it's like I actually get frustrated because when Demon Souls first came out, I was an early adopter. I actually bought a PlayStation for Demon Souls because I saw Zero Punctuation. He talked about the game. It sounded like he's like the game really kicks you in the ass, but it's honestly a lot of fun. I was like, oh, like it punishes you, so you have to like try to really be good and be careful. I really like the idea of being methodical and moving slowly and like being strategic with the decisions that you make. I really liked that, and I played that game so much. I played through with a magic build. I played through as a magic knight, so intermixing it. My weapons scaled off of it, and I wore heavy armor. I played like a heavy block build. I played like a katana only heavy dex dodge build. I did almost everything the game would let you do, including going through the entire game so that I could be an invader who was naked, wearing the silver helmet, and dual wielding tower shields, and that's how I would invade people. And I just run at them with my shields. And it was very funny. And it was very fun. And the variety is what makes it good. And people will say, oh, well, you just want the easy way. And it's like, well, no, I want more than one way.
I want it the fun way.
Yeah, I want different builds, different armors, different weapons, different skills to offer different styles of play. And yeah, you know what? being a noble at the start of Demon Souls and playing through the game by using a little wand to go pew 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 is a lot easier than naked rolling with a club.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different style of play.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I've reached a point where if I see iframes and dodge rolling, I go, oh, it's just roll slop. That's what I call it, roll slop. Because at this point, everything is just about dodging with iframes. Can you play Dance Dance Revolution with your controller? Because that's what it is. It's a rhythm game. Sekiro's a rhythm game. People get really mad, but that's what it is. It's a rhythm game.
You know, in the later Souls games, it feels like they really wanted to. Now thinking about it, I feel like they want to stop that by making attacks more random and harder to predict.
That's what they tried. Yeah, because in Elden Ring, the boss holds its swing for like 30 years, but if you try to punish that, they instantly swing at you.
Yeah.
Well, Elden Ring has its own problem because of all the input reading. All the enemies and bosses have like extreme input reading. So if you don't just stand there and wait while they go like this for 20 minutes, the second you take an action that isn't just standing there, they swing.
Yeah, I lost patience with that game. I couldn't.
I beat it, and I don't think I'll ever beat it again.
I could beat it, but it's like I've beaten like most other Souls games. Who am I proving?
Yeah, who are you proving it to? Yeah. Well, the game falls off after the capital anyway. It's all really poorly designed after that, which is like a FromSoft staple.
Yeah.
You know, the ending of the game, the last third or fourth of the game is always like underdeveloped and badly made.
But is it as good as Dragon Toes? Just right.
So true. Yeah, no, like you're talking about Paper Mario?
No, I'm talking about the dragon feet in the original Dark Souls.
Oh, right. Yeah. No.
just the legs. Just the legs.
Yeah, just some legs attacking you.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Paper Mario when the boss tries to entice you by letting it sniff its toes. And you're like, who wrote this?
Is someone who knows their audience.
And then the guy who you rescue, Coop's dad, is like he got eaten because he got enticed by sniffing her toes. I'm like, who wrote this?
Yeah.
Who did that?
Someone who knows, who wants to awaken something.
I don't know, man. Either way, all I can say is that, you know, I think that it's fine that these things exist, but it feels like nobody wants to go, hey, it's because here's the thing. If you said I want to make a Souls-like, I'd be like, great. What is it you want to make? Well, what they don't want to make is Dark Souls, but with features that they like. What they want to make is sort of Dark Souls, but like boring. It's like Lords of the Fallen. I couldn't get into it. I just truly hated it both times. Right?
You played it twice?
Yeah, well, I played Lords of the Fallen, and then I played Lords of the Fallen. There was the Lords of the Fallen. So it was Lords of the Fallen, then the Lords of the Fallen. But then they just call it Lords of the Fallen.
An important difference, yeah.
Yeah, well, now it's not the. You know, and I couldn't get into that. I can't get into a lot of roll slop.
There was this one game that was like I forget what it's called. It was another Dark Souls game, but it looked like an Unreal Engine asset dump. And I don't know why people look like they were excited for it, and I didn't understand why. Here's the problem. I think a good quote that kind of encompasses this. I'm gonna paraphrase it because I remember nothing well. Players will often kind of optimize out the fun in a game.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like that's what happened. Like players will play I love Dark Souls. I played it so many times. There's a streamer called Lobos Jr. who's like done like Dark Souls 1 a million different ways. And the problem is at some point they just gotta make shit harder for themselves. Because like they've
done it a million times.
They've done it a million times.
There's nothing new if they don't like attach electrodes to their prostate and then like threaten to shoot themselves in the head if they die 6 times.
And then
they don't know what to do.
And then people come in with this person who has like spent like what feels like a decade just playing the same game over and over, just trying to find a way to make that fun for themselves. And they say, "Oh, it's like, oh, this is the way to play this game.
This is correct, and if you do it any other way, you're wrong."
And it's like,
yeah,
which is an antithesis to what Dark Souls is about, which is funny
Mm-hmm.
because if you see any like any talk with the actual, I forget his name, the director of Dark
Miyazaki,
Souls,
yeah.
Miyazaki's thing is that even the storytelling is supposed to be fragmented because because it's from his experience of like reading American books and knowing so little about the language. It felt like he was putting together puzzle pieces. You are supposed to be you're not supposed to be like, oh, you're not supposed to be this guy who just rolls every attack and all this stuff.
At least in the earlier games. I mean, he seemed to really lean into, you know, the newer stuff. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
it the idea was that even like the weakest enemy could kill you, and that you through like hardship were supposed to like make it through. It's like he was surprised by the idea that people had like rules to invading. He was like, "What?" I was like, "What?"
Yeah, I actually I think that those games are best when you don't look stuff up, at least on your first playthrough. You know, on my second playthrough, I'll look stuff up, but I really loved Demon Souls when I was, you know, young. There was no wiki. I had no clue what I was doing. And it was really cool to just be playing and then discover something and be like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to like use this or wear this or whatever, you know. And only like probably a lot later did I start going on like Google and looking through forums to try to like find something that I saw in a video, but I didn't know where it was. But like that first playthrough of something is really at its best when you're just kind of like figuring it out on your own.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I always say is like, I don't like when someone teaches me something. I like when someone is there to answer questions. So like if I'm learning a new game, like my friend who's experienced, I don't want him to tell me everything. What I want is like if I say, so I don't really know where to start. And then they go, well, why don't you go do this? Okay, why? And then they answer that question. And then I just kind of do it, right? I like to just sort of like play with it and learn and be able to have a resource to understand how to do something that I think you should. So like, okay, I understand that like you can build a refrigerator, but like how? And they go, oh, well, if you build a cooler and then put that in the wall, you can set the temperature and then the room will become cold and that's a freezer. And I was like, oh, that's like a really, that's cool. I didn't ever think that that's how that would work. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So like things like that are the best way to experience it. What sucks is that everything is solved. Games are solved. You know, you try to play Phasmophobia with people, well, they've got a million hours and they know exactly how to do it, right? This is how it works. These are the mechanics. There's no trial and error. There's no experimenting. There's no unknowns. You're just like, this is what you do. You run in, Mary Sanders, Mary Sanders, Mary Sanders, this temperature, got this, okay, leave, right? And that is the problem, I think, with a lot of modern gaming. So then, as you said, everything is solved. All the answers are at your fingertips. And then you go and you see, you know, Glup Shido, and he's streaming his 5,000th insert game run. And he's doing the I commit suicide live on stream if I die run.
No,
and
if I
like,
get hit run.
If I get hit, yeah. And so then you're like, oh, that's the only way to play, right? What difficulty are you on? If you're not on the hardest difficulty, you're doing it wrong. And I've watched people I know, and they got mad at me when I pointed out to them, only to years later, admit I was right. Be mad at the game that they're playing because they immediately picked up the game. They'd never played it before. They turned it on the hardest difficulty.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're a streamer or whatever, and so they think that they have to be doing that. And I'll watch them be having a bad time. Yeah. And then I'll say, you know, it doesn't seem like you're having much fun. I'm like, no, I love it. I love it. I'm like, do you really? You don't really seem like you're having a very frustrating time and you're not really happy. And then like a year later, they're like, you know, you were right. I was just always pushing difficulty because I felt I had to, and it wasn't very fun. And then people will argue with me when I say I always play games on normal. And they'll be like, oh, well, the developer says the true game is on heroic. And I go, then they should have called that normal. Yeah. Normal means baseline. If your game has a normal difficulty, that's the one I'll pick because I want to know what the game looks like as a normal experience. And later, I'll play on heroic or legendary or Glup Shido standard. You know, I'll play on whatever high difficulty. I've been playing RimWorld. I've been doing like 4 different colonies in the temperate forest, and now today I started a colony in the tundra, and maybe I'll die the ice sheets. Maybe I'll die in 5 minutes from hypothermia, but I know the game well enough now that I can try to push difficulty. But if you're like a new player, there's nothing more frustrating than what difficulty are you on? I don't know, man. The difficulty.
Yeah.
I turned the game on.
I normally find that I also put everything on normal except I think FPS games. I put it on like the second from highest because I feel comfortable enough on a mouse and keyboard to do that.
Sure.
But the problem is that you need to know. The problem is in harder difficulties, the game expects you to use more mechanics,
Right.
and you don't know if you like the mechanics yet.
And sometimes the mechanics are really bad. I
Yeah.
remember with the God of War, the new God of War with Dad Kratos. Give me God of War mode is not God of War. I played all the old God of War games on the highest difficulties, and give me God of War in the new God of War is not those games. What it is you grind, because in the older games it required you to be better at combos, better at the mechanics. What it didn't mean was I juggle the same enemy for 20 straight minutes because his health bar goes all the way to next Tuesday.
I hate that about the new God of Wars. They turned it to RPGs. The worst thing about the new God of Wars is the equipment shit.
The equipment shit, I don't like the boss fights.
Yeah.
There's nothing I hate more with than I grind against a guy for 15 minutes, his health bar hits 0. It's time for him to go, actually, I wasn't using my dildo power, and his bar fills up all the way.
Yeah.
And then you like bash his head in the wall and you like rip his skull in half, and then he like regenerates and he goes, wow, Kratos, you're a cuckold. I actually am on PCP. And then you have to do the third round. And then they don't die, they hobble away. You know what I mean? And because they're gonna be back for the next 3-stage fight.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not entertaining. Why does that seem fun?
Next time on Dragon Ball Z,
you fight the same guy again for 30 straight minutes.
You know, I've been watching JoJo's recently, and one thing I appreciate is that once they deal with a character, they're gone.
They're gone.
It's normally done and over with.
Yeah.
It's like
oh, good. I'm glad.
It's like there's no, oh, he might come back again. No, he's done.
He's done. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm sure that's like a hot take, but it was just something I found so frustrating about the new God of War games is that like if every fight felt like a grind, and what difficulty meant is it didn't mean better use of the mechanics. It meant just more punishing if you get hit, which I guess means don't get hit, and you're going to be swinging at this guy for a long time.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I sometimes felt, I liked how God of War felt sometimes, but then I was like, I've been smacking this guy for like 10 hours. What the fuck? When is he going to die? This main guy, Kratos, who just is used to just tearing things apart, seems to be having a very hard time tearing this one guy apart.
Yeah, I think watching, like, I think whenever, you fight like another god, and just watching you like literally like brain them, crush their skulls, crush their spine, and then they stand back up and like explain to you that, thanks to the power of like galactic baseball, they're actually going to shit in your mouth.
This is my problem with like most RPGs and a lot of the looter shooter shit, is that they remove the impact for the sake of you feeling good about your numbers, which makes like the actual thing you're doing feel worse.
Right.
So like I like the Max Payne games, because when I headshot someone, they're dead. I mean, like when I'm headshot, I'm dead too, but at least like it's like there's some skill involved. It's like if I do something well, I don't have to do it well 5,000 times to kill one guy. It's like not even like he's not even like the Don or something. He's not like I'm a big boss. No, he's like Joe Schmo somehow has the world's hardest skull, and everyone else thought, "Wow, I'm glad that you have made a cast iron skull to put into your head, we shall all also do the same things and put cast iron skulls in our heads just
Right.
just to piss off the player.
Yeah, I've always hated looter shooters for that reason. I can't get into them. I always end up using a shotgun because it's the only gun that when you shoot someone, they might just die.
Yeah, I use a shotgun and I put an ACOG sight on it, so it's a sniper. I make fun of this. It's like I did it in like, what is it? That Ubisoft city shooter thing.
The Division.
The Division. It's not worth saying the name because it feels like it's like because you put like a ACOG on a shotgun and all of a sudden it gains range. It's like yeah,
because that's how guns work.
yeah, that's how guns work.
Yeah, it's
Division 2 Harmony Edition.
please not. The thing is that I feel like when I play those games, you know, they'll like give you a sniper rifle, right? And you've got this gun with a really long range and a huge bullet whose special ability is precision shooting to take out a target, right?
And in all other games, it's a one-shot kill.
Yeah, and in those games, you shoot someone in the head 5 times, they're wearing a baseball hat, and it does not kill them. But if I run up to them going and shotgun them in the face, they just die. And so I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. So if I just act like a psychopath and don't use any mechanics or strategy, I just run in screaming like I'm on meth and just shotgun people in the face, I will win. But if I use the strategic long-range weapon, I will just be bored. That's what it actually feels like.
Yeah.
You know? That has always been my frustration. Or you like unload a minigun in a guy's chest and he sits there going and
weak shit.
Yeah, weak shit. And he's just like a mook. He's not even the boss. He's just like a mook. And it's just like, I don't know what you were thinking. Why do you think this is fun?
Well, people enjoy the Borderlands games. I
liked the first Borderlands, and Borderlands 2 was okay.
Here's what happens. My friends say, let's play Borderlands. We go through the beginning part with Claptrap.
And then we turn it off.
We go to the Bully Mongs, and then we never come back.
Yeah. I actually, Borderlands is a funny example of a game I use a shotgun in. In fact, my ideal shotgun is the Torg shotgun because it just fires 8 missiles. And so if you go and run at someone with the shotgun and get up into their face, you can shotgun them in the face with 8 mini missiles, instantly killing them, which is a much better strategy than anything else. And I hate that.
Yeah.
But I think sort of the quintessential like thing, the little border of an idea that surrounds this conversation is that at the end of the day, it feels like there are a few really cool games out there, but so many games are coming out that are just like a copy of a copy of a copy that there was no attempt made. It's not like someone said, oh, because I go back to Darkest Dungeon. I really love Darkest Dungeon. I wonder if I could take everything about this, but make it more about strategy and less about our RNG and make it a little bit more like a dungeon adventure game. Because I really love the like unique semi-roguelike dungeon adventure building your party aspect of it. I just don't really like when the funny skeleton goes, want a little sippy? And he goes, oh God, a sippy. Oh, I gotta kill my friends now. Oh, I'm having a heart attack. You know what I mean? Like that to me isn't a fun mechanic. And other people say that's a good mechanic. I'm just saying I don't enjoy it. But I would love all those things without those mechanics. You know, and I would love that game, but nobody wants to do that. Instead, they go, well, I'm just going to make this same game. Red Hook did it to themselves. They made Darkest Dungeon 2, which is like a weird roguelike. It's Slay the Spire. It's actually Slay the Spire. You move between nodes that have different effects and reactions. You have a map going like this. You move between different nodes. And you need to make it to the end to beat the boss. And you gain stuff along the way. It's literally Slay the Spire, except instead of cards, you just have abilities on each character. But
disposable people, yeah.
Disposable, yeah. Well, but that's even the thing. They're not even as disposable because if you have to replace them at an inn, if they die, but you survive and get to the end, well, you get a new guy who it doesn't have all the benefits that the guy before him had. Right? So you might as well just start your run over in most situations. And so... like, and they made like the bounty hunter not a permanent character, and
Oh no.
all sorts of stuff like that. And I think that it's like mechanically I like the combat in Darkest Dungeon 2. I beat that, whereas I never beat the first game because I always get bored about halfway. But I don't like that it's a roguelike experience. I like the literal slay the spire, climb the tower style experience. I wish it was the Hamlet like the first game.
I'm getting real tired. I never got into roguelites. I
actually hate that term roguelite because there's a game that is a roguelike that calls itself a roguelite, and then a roguelite that calls itself a roguelike. And the only difference is that they're saying, well, the difference is whether there's meta progression. And I go, who cares? These are all roguelikes because they're like Rogue. Okay? In every
Rogue
way,
the video game.
they are similar to Rogue the video game, which is why they're called a roguelike. We don't call it like Souls-like and then Souls-light. There's no such thing. It either is or is not Souls-like, but we pretend that there's a difference between these two genres.
It's like Metroidvania. It's like there's no Metroid
Vania-light.
Kind of Vania.
This is a kind of Metroidvania-light. This is Pedialyte. Drink it. Like, you get what I'm saying, though, right? No, I get it. I've never been big into the roguelike genre very much. Sometimes it's good. I think the like unique dungeons each time is fine.
When the mechanics are fun to interact with. When it's like Dead Cells is very fun. The combat is very fun. I like the animations and I like the sounds, the squishy sounds. It's like it's a very fun game, and that's why I like it. And I'm fine with it being a roguelite or whatever. It's like I
want it to be a Glup Shitto like.
I wish it was just a game that had levels and you went through the levels. But I deal with that with the fact that it is a fun mechanical game.
Yeah, sure.
So there are games that I'm like, okay, I can accept this.
Sure, yeah.
But I also just wish you made a video game with levels.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I feel often. Yeah, and it's not to say that these other things can't exist, but I think that the focus on them, going back to sort of the original thesis, is with the focus on them, people don't make these other things because they feel they have to just keep making the same thing.
Yeah,
that's sort of my point. But anyway, I feel like we covered this topic pretty well. Did you have anything else you wanted to say or anything we didn't cover?
Not really, no.
All right. Well, hopefully if you made it to the end, you enjoyed this conversation. I know I did. And hopefully next time we show up here, everything will actually just work.
You know,
it won't.
It will not. But you know what? If we're lucky, my camera was very shaky. That just means the conversation was very good.
Well, this camera works really well and never fucks up, actually, which is really good. We should never replace this camera. We should just keep it because I think it's important that the frame of your camera does this every few seconds for no apparent reason that can be surmised.
No, I'm just moving the world.
You have such impact that you make this whole world move.
Yeah, that's why I need to lose weight.
You're too powerful. Every step, every movement, every expression, too powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.